So he says here that there's ahmar, which is the red, and then there's also a yellow hue in the sky, and then there's a white hue in the sky. When he's talking about this, and al-ahmar maghrib, wal-asfar wal-abyad isha. And so the one that is red, this shows the time that it's a maghrib time, and if it's the yellowish one or the white one, the yellowish or white hue that's up in the sky at night, then this is isha. This is in the time of isha. He says, وَيُنْدَبُ تَأْخِيرُ صَلَاةِ الْعِشَاءِ إِلَى أَنْ يَغِيبَ الشَّفَقُ الْأَصْفَرُ وَالْأَبْيَضُ. He says, and it's sunnah for somebody to wait until when they to delay the Isha prayer until the yellow hue and the white hue leave the sky. So they say it's sunnah to delay it a little bit from that. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Now he goes into, he says, there are certain things, certain times when it's not permissible for someone to pray salah that doesn't have a preceding cause. He says here in this next section, فَصْلٌ تَحْرُمُ الصَّلَاةُ الَّتِي لَيْسَ لَهَا سَبَبٌ مُتَقَدِّمٌ وَلَا مُقَارِنٌ فِي خَمْسَةِ أَوْقَاتٍ. He says that it's impermissible for someone to pray a prayer that doesn't have a preceding cause or an accompanying cause at 5 times. And so there's 5 times that it's impermissible for someone to pray a prayer unless it has a preceding cause. A preceding cause is like if someone comes into the masjid, say they come into the masjid before Maghrib. All right, they come. There's a reason for them to pray because they came into the masjid and they should pray 2 rakats before they sit down. They have a preceding cause to pray. And so in this case, they would have a preceding cause and they would pray this. Or the sunnah that is, or if someone was to pray the sunnah after wudu, like they were, and this is once they make wudu, then this is a cause for them to pray the sunnah of wudu, which is like 2 rakats after wudu. Then this would also be a reason for them to do this, as long as they don't intend to pray at the impermissible time. As long as that's not the intention of what they're doing, as long as they don't intend to pray at the impermissible time, then they can pray during that time because they have a reason for that. And so he says there's 5 times that it's impermissible without, if it doesn't have a preceding cause or something that is an accompanying cause in that. And he says here, of these times, the 5 times it's impermissible is, he says, عند طلوع الشمس حتى ترتفع قدر رمح. So when the sun rises, in this time it's impermissible for someone to pray until the sun rises to the length of a spear. In this amount of time, this is once sunrise happens. You'll find it on the screens and whatnot. You'll see that sunrise, what did they say right here? It says sunrise at 7:17 right now. So once the sun rises, it's impermissible to pray right now at the time of the sunrise. You have to wait until the sun rises the length of a spear. How long is the length of a spear? Some of the scholars, they say this is like around 15 minutes. Like 15 minutes after that, so it's like 7:17 right now. So some would say it's 15 minutes from that, so it'd be like 7:30 that someone would pray. All right, and so in some of them, they said you can pray if it's like 13 minutes afterwards. This is like Sheikh Abdul Aziz al-Turayfi. He says that it's like 13 minutes. The level of that. So you'd wait 13 minutes after the sunrise, and then you could pray. But for that first 13 minutes, it would be impermissible for you to pray. And so this is also someone who wants to pray the duha prayer. They need to wait until this time comes. And sometimes people pray as soon as the sunrise. No, this is not correct. They need to wait a little bit longer. They need to wait until the sun has risen for the length of a spear, which is usually about 13 to 15 minutes. And if you want to be safe, then maybe 20 minutes. All right. And this is also, sometimes people will say this is the shuruk prayer, but it's not for the shuruk necessarily. It's the duha prayer, but it comes after shuruk has already finished, like about 15 minutes. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. All right, and then he says the next time that it's impermissible to pray is وَلِذْنْ الْإِسْتِوَاءِ فِي غَيْرِ يَوْمِ الْجُمْعَةِ حَتَّى تَزُولَ. And he says here, and also when the sun comes up to the peak of the sky, when it's the solar noon, like we were talking about before, when the shadow gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and then it stops. Once the shadow stops, when it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller of an object, that's the peak of the sky. It's not permissible to pray during this time. And this comes up in a hadith, and the Prophet ﷺ, he says that Jahannam, it breathes out during this time, and so this is the time that we're not supposed to pray. Until the time for Zuhr comes in, which is when you'll see this when that shadow starts to grow. As soon as the shadow starts to grow, okay, you can do this. But when it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, then the shadow stops, and that's when you're not allowed to pray. And it's usually about 4 minutes. It's usually about 3 or 4 minutes right before the time for Zuhr. And he makes the exception here of other than the day of Jummah. On the day of Jummah, then the person is allowed to do this because of the hadith that come in the meaning that that it's sunnah for someone to pray all the way up until the imam comes up and gives the khutbah. So all of that time from the beginning of the day to the Jummah, there's no impermissible time during that. So that's an exception. All right, and he says. وعند الفرار حتى تغرب. And also at the time of at the time when the sun starts to get yellow, when the sun starts to get yellow after Asr until the sun sets, this is impermissible for someone to pray during this time. And so this is that time which is late. In Asr, it's impermissible for someone to pray. If someone hasn't prayed Asr yet, then they have to pray it. And this is the time that's makruh to delay it to this time. But if they haven't prayed Asr, then they pray it. But if it's if they're praying a salah without any other purpose, then in this case it would be impermissible. All right, he says here, وَبَعْدَ الصَّلَاةِ الصُّبْحِ حَتَّى تَطْلُعَ الشَّمْسِ. Also, once somebody prays the subh prayer, they pray the Salat al-Fajr, then it would be impermissible for them to pray after that, any prayer that didn't have a preceding cause, until the sun comes up. If say they came late, and they came late to the masjid, and they caught the people while they're in the jama'ah, and they didn't pray the two beforehand, then after this they can pray the two. There's no problem, because this has a preceding cause. But other than that preceding cause, they can't pray anything else after that. All right, and then he says here, وَبَعْدَ صَلَاةِ الْعَصْرِ حَتَّى تَغْرُبَ الشَّمْسِ. And so, and also after Salat al-Asr until the sun sets. So after you pray the Asr prayer until the sun sets, you're not supposed to pray any other prayers unless it has a preceding reason. Also, he says, سَكَتَاتُ الصَّلَاةِ سِتَّةِ. And he says that there's 6 times that someone would be silent during the salah. And then the normal standard thing is that somebody is not silent during the salah. Normally, someone is praying and they're normally making dhikr throughout the salah. They're not stopping in the dhikr, but they're constantly remembering Allah. So he says there's 6 times when someone would have a slight pause, and that's what a sakta is, a slight pause. He says, بين تكبيرة الإحرام ودعاء الافتتاح. He says there's a slight pause when he says Allahu Akbar. And then before he starts, وَجَّهْتُ وَجْهِي لِلَّذِي فَطَرَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And so until he starts with that, there's a slight pause. And this is just a small pause. And sakta is a small pause for someone to take their breath and whatnot. And so there's a slight pause here. And he also says, وَبَيْنَ دُعَاءِ الْإِفْتِتَاحِ وَالتَّعَوُّذِ. And then the person would make a slight pause after he says this. He says the du'a al-iftitah, which is the opening supplication. And then he says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, which is also sunnah. And so he would make a small pause between the du'a al-iftitah, which is the beginning. And he ends this, and then he'd have a pause, and then أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. And then also he says, وَبَيْنَ الْفَاتِحَةِ وَالتَّعَوُّذِ. Then also a break after he says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, break. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين, to the end of that. And then he also says the next break would be وبين آخر الفاتحة وآمين. And then also between the end of Al-Fatiha and when the person says Ameen. So once he says وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ, break, Ameen. So he makes a small break here. This is a sunnah for them to make that break. And then he also says وَبَيْنَ آمين وَالسُّورَةِ. And then also a small break between the time when he says Ameen and then the surah that comes afterwards. And so that he doesn't connect Ameen with the next surah, but he makes a small break in that. And the saktas is something that should be a small portion, a small pause. And the meaning of this is like the amount for someone to say Subhanallah. Just that, 2 seconds. It's not like a huge pause. He also says, وَبَيْنَ السُّورَةِ وَالرُّكُوعِ. And also, when the person finishes the second surah, that's sunnah, when they recite, and then before they go into ruku', so they would make a small pause, and then they would go into ruku'. And these are the sakatat, or like the little pauses, the short pauses that someone would have in the salah. He says here, فَصْلٌ أَرْكَانٌ الَّتِي تَلْزَمُهُ فِيهَا الطُّمَأْنِينَةُ أَرْبَعٌ. And he says the pillars that someone needs to be still in them are four. There's four of these pillars, which tumatnina, or like which is being still in it, is obligatory. These four, he mentioned them before, but he's just going to go over them again. The first one is ar-ruku'. When the person's in ruku', he needs to be still in it. And also, wal-i'tidal, when he comes up from ruku', he needs to be still. Also, he says was sujud, also in sujud, and as well as wal julusu bayna sajdatain, and also the sitting between the two sujud. Then in this point, he would also need to be still in them. He says what at-tuma'ninatu hiya sukunun ba'da haraka bihaythu yastaqirru kullu 'udwin mahallahu biqadri subhanallah. And so he says, Tuma'nina, what is the definition of this? He says it's a pause after every movement to such an extent that every, the body, all the body parts are still in their position at the length of someone saying, Subhanallah. So by Subhanallah, what is that? That's like 2 seconds or so. It's the length that their body is still in that position. And then they go to the next position. And this is the understanding for that tumatnina, or that composure. He says here, faslun asbabu sujudi sahwu arba. And he says that there's four causes for someone to make sujood sahwu. Sujood sahwu is the prostration of forgetfulness. This is the sunnah. The prostration of forgetfulness itself is a sunnah. If someone was to forget to do it, the salah would still be valid. But it's prescribed to make up for a deficiency in the salah. He says the first of them, like the things that you would make sujood sahwu for, is first, he says, al-awwal tarku ba'din min ab'adi salah, aw ba'dil ba'd. And so he says the first of them is that if someone left off a ba'd, which is a portion, which is a sunnah of the salah that is a major portion. It's called a ba'd, meaning it's a major portion of it, or part of one of these. In this case, then leaving off of this thing, such as leaving off the tashahhud. So one leaves off the tashahhud, the first tashahhud, not the second one. If they leave off the first one, then they would make sujood sahwu afterwards. And then he also says, he's going to talk about what is a ba'd, and he'll list them out. And the second one that would cause someone to make sujood sahwu, الثاني فعل ما يبطل عمده ولا يبطل سهوه إذا فعله ناسيا. And also the second reason that someone would make a sujood sahwu is for doing something that if they intentionally did this action, it would break the salah. But he did it, but it wouldn't break the salah if he did it unintentionally, out of forgetfulness. If he did it out of forgetfulness, in this case, he would do this. An example: if someone were to talk during salah, if you talk during the salah intentionally, you know that you're in salah, and you say something to your neighbor, you broke the salah. If you were to accidentally say something to your neighbor, you forgot that you were in salah, or you just forgot you weren't supposed to talk, then in this case, it doesn't break the salah, but you would make sujood sahwu. All right? And same thing like this is if someone were to, like they were accidentally to move too much. In this case, and they realize, oh, I just moved too much. And this normally would break the salah if they did it intentionally, but if it was unintentionally, then it would not break the salah. And so they would make sujood sahwu for this mistake. And like this is if somebody thought the salah had ended. Say they were short they were short one rak'ah, and so they ended the salah. And then they talk to somebody and they say, you're still missing a pillar, or you're still missing a rak'ah. And then he says, oh, I'm missing a rak'ah? He's like, yeah. So he stands back up and he goes and prays. He just had a conversation here. This would mean that he needs to go make a sujood sahwu at the end. And that would be sunnah for him. All right? He says the third thing that would cause the sujood sahwu, he says, نَقْلُ رُكْنٍ قَوْلِيًّا إِلَى غَيْرِ مَحَلِّهِ. And so if somebody were to take one of the pillars that is a statement, the pillars that is a statement, and he was to say it in the wrong place. Say he was, and so say this person was to recite the Fatiha in the tashahhud. Instead of when he goes into the tashahhud, he should be saying at-tahiyatu lillah. He says Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So he just put this in the wrong place. He just took this rukun and he put it in the wrong place. In this case, he would make a sujood sahw for putting this verbal integral, the verbal rukun, into its wrong place. All right. And then also he says here, الرابع إنقاء ركن فعليا مع الاحتمال الزيادة. So if he were to do an extra, he was to do a pillar, some type of pillar, and he could have been doing this an extra pillar. So say he forgot what rak'ah he's on. This is like the example. He forgets what rak'ah he's on. He thinks he's either on the third one or the fourth one. He's not sure. He's on the third one. So he goes up and he stands up. He's not for sure whether he's on the third one or the fourth one. So he stands up for the last rak'ah. Because if he's on the fourth one, then this is a fifth rak'ah. But he doesn't intend it, so it could be a fifth rak'ah. So it could be a possible ziyada, or like an addition. So in this case, when he stood up and he's going to pray another rak'ah, in this case, it could be the fourth one or it could be the fifth one, which is extra. So in this case, he's going to make sujood sahw because of the possibility of it being an extra rak'ah. And so these are the things that would cause someone to make a sujood sahw. Now he's going to talk about what are the ab'ad, which are the plurals of ab'ad, which is a portion of the salah. And the Shafi'is, they break up all of the things in salah. They break it up into either a pillar, which is a rukun, or it's the next level down is ab'ad, which it's not obligatory to do in the salah, but it is a part of the salah. And if you leave it, you would make up for the mistake with making sujood. And so this is like the tashahhud. And this is the way the Shafi'is, they break in. They say that you have arkan, which is the pillar of the salah, the pillars. Then you have ab'ad, that's the plural of ba'd, which is the singular, which is a part, essential part. But it doesn't invalidate the salah if left out. And then what you have after this is you have the hayat or the sunan, which are things that beautify the prayer, but they don't affect the validity of it. And it wouldn't necessitate, if someone forgot it, it wouldn't necessitate anything. And so he says here the ab'ad, which is that middle thing, this is the little less than a pillar. Then these are 7. And Al-Khatib al-Sharbini, he mentions, just like as an example, he says like the conditions of the salah, if we were to liken it to the salah to a person, the conditions of the salah are like the life to the person. This has to be there. If it's not there, then he's dead. All right? And he says the arkan of the salah is like the major body parts of a person that he would die without, such as his head, such as his torso. He's going to die without these. And he says then the ab'ad of the prayer is like the body parts of a person that aren't essential, meaning like an arm or a leg. If it was missing, the person's still a person. He can still get about doing his business, but he's going to be lacking. And then he says the hayat is like the hair of a person. It makes someone beautiful. And so in this case, it's good to have, but if you were to not have it, it's not going to destroy the salah. All right, so he says the ab'ad here, there's 7 of them. The first of them, at-tashahhud al-awwal, which is the first tashahhud. That's the one that would be the first one. And then, of course, this is if the person is praying more than 2 rak'ats, or else that first one would be the last one. All right, and that would be a pillar. But if it's the first one, say it's like you're praying 3 rak'ats or you're praying 4 rak'ats, then in this case, this would be the first one is going to be a ba'd. It's going to be a part. And then the second ba'd is maq'uduhu, and also sitting for it. This is also a portion. Also, he says was-salatu ala nabiyyi fihi, and sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and also saying Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. During the first tashahhud, when somebody finishes the at-tahiyatu lillahi, and then they say wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, you should say after this Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, and then you say Allahu Akbar and come up. And so you would say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad at this point. And then the next of them, it says was salatu ala al-ali fi tashahhud al-akhir. And also the next of the ba'd, which is for someone after they say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. This is the next ba'd. And of course it's sunnah to finish it off. Kama sallayta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad. The rest of this is sunnah to the end of that. And so, but to say وَعَلَى آلِ Muhammad, this is the next of the ba'd, that someone, if they left it off, then they would make sujood sahwi for leaving it off. Of course, they could just do it because this is the end of their salah, but it is an essential portion here. He says here, well, kunut, also kunut, in the places where it's sunnah to do kunut, then at this point, if someone were to forget to do kunut, then they would make sujood sahwi at the end of it. And if they were to forget to do qunut, and also he says, "Wassalatu wassalam ala nabiyyi sallallahu alaihi wasallam." Also, if someone were to forget to do the salat and salam in the qunut, then in this case, they would also they would do the sujood sahwi for forgetting to do this, because this is a portion of the qunut itself, is for someone to send as-salam wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad. And also he says, wa alihi wa sahbihi fihi. Also, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. Someone would need to say this as well in the qunut to complete the qunut. And if they didn't complete it, then they would make sujood sahwi at the end for that, in completion. Now he's going to talk about the things that break the salah. And this is very important. He says here, faslun tabduru salatu bi arba'a ashra khasla. He says the salah is broken with 14 things. The first thing, he says here, and as I mentioned before, all of the conditions of the salah, if they're missing, they break it. So those conditions were previously mentioned. You'll see that they're repeated here. He says the first of them, bil hadath. So the person, if he breaks his wudu or anything else, then at this point the salah is invalidated. He says وَبِوُقُوعِ النَّجَاسَةِ إِن لَمْ تُلْقَ حَالًا مِنْ غَيْرِ حَمْلٍ. And so the second one is if any type of najasa falls onto him, in this point, if he doesn't get rid of it right away without carrying it. So if say somebody was praying and all of a sudden a little bit of najasa falls onto their shirt, it's dry. We're going to say it's dry because they can get rid of this. So immediately he drops his shirt like this and then najasa falls. No problem, he keeps praying. If he were to leave it there, or he were to pick up the najasa and then throw it, it would break the salah, because now he's carrying najasa. If he were to pick it up, he's carrying it. But if he were to just pull his sleeve like this really quick and it just pops off really easily, then there's nothing upon him. He keeps praying. As opposed to if he were to pick it up, now he's carrying najasa and this breaks the salah. All right. He says, "One kishaf al-awrati in lam tustar halan." And he says, and also if the awra was exposed, if he didn't put it back right away. So say the wind blew and something of the awra showed. And so in this case, if you put it back right away, he covered the awra, or like the woman and whatnot, she covered her awra right away, no problem. But if she leaves it, then it breaks the salah. All right? والنطق بحرفين أو حرف مفهم عمدا. And also, if someone were to say something, they were to speak with 2 letters or 1 letter that's understood and purposefully. So like in Arabic, you can have a single letter that is understood, such as qi. The word qi means protect. And so it's basically you're telling someone to protect themselves. So it comes from yaqi. And so you ever say qi, ra, or which means look. These words, like it's just a single letter, but it's a word that's understood, then it breaks the salah. If it was intentionally spoken. If it was not intentionally spoken, then it wouldn't break the salah. But even a single word that is intentionally understood, stop. If someone were to say stop, no. If they were to say no, and someone asks him something, he says no. And he said this intentionally, it breaks the salah. If he forgot, it doesn't break the salah. All right. He says, وَبِالْ مُفْتِرْ عَمْدًا. And also if he does anything that breaks the fast, it breaks the salah. And this is a basic concept that the Shafi'is hold. Anything that would break your fast also breaks the salah. So if you were to take a drink and that would break your fast, it breaks the salah. And so this is no eating or drinking in the salah and whatnot. Anything else that would break the fast, it would break the salah as well. And he says, وَالْأَكْلِ الْكَثِيرِ نَاسِيًا. Also eating a lot while the person is forgetful. And normally this would not normally break your fast if you were to eat a lot while you were fasting and you forgot that you were fasting, and so you ate a lot, no problem. Your fast is still good. Of course, once you remember, you have to stop right immediately, but it doesn't affect the fast. But in the salah, it would affect the salah because you're standing in salah. You're basically doing something that should be reminding you that you're not doing other things. So the salah would be something that a lot of eating would break it. If even if it was a lot of eating while being forgetful, at this point it would break the salah because it goes so contrary to the format of salah. Also, he says, وَثَلَاثِ حَرَكَاتٍ مُتَوَالِيَاتٍ وَلَوْ سَهْوًا. And so here he says, in three movements, these are like three large movements that are all together, even if forgetful. And so a movement would be like someone moving their arm from here to here. That's one movement. Or someone making a single step. Someone's standing here, they make one step. That's one movement. They make another step, that's another movement. They make the third step, their salah is broken. And so this is the Shafi'i madhab, they say it's three movements that are all together. If they're three continuous movements that are large movements, not minor movements, but large movements, then at this point it breaks the salah. Three continuous movements. If you were to say you wanted to move up into a row, then you could make one large step and then you could just step up. And this is normally how, if I need to fill up a gap in a row, I'll just take one large step, and then the foot will come up to meet the other foot. That doesn't count as another movement. So you do this, and then you could stop for a second, do another step, stop for a second, do another step, stop for a second. Even though this would be three large movements, since you made a pause between them and you separated them from each other, it doesn't break the salah. If you were to do 1, 2, 3, 4, not done. The salah is done because this person's running in his salah. But you do one, then you can stop. You do another step, stop, another step, stop, another step. There we go, no problem. But if you were to put them all together, it breaks the salah because the person is moving in his salah with three continuative movements. And so this is something to keep in mind. Why is it three? This is the Shafi'i madhab. They say this is what is understood as a lot of movement. Like from just when you ask what is the limit of a lot, they say three. And this goes back to the urf, or like the customs of what is considered a lot of movement. And of course, there's an understanding with all of the fuqaha that a lot of movement outside of the meaning of salah, it breaks the salah. So this is three movements. It says here, وَالْوَثْبَةِ الْفَاحِشَةِ, and a big jump. If someone was to jump, this is a big movement. And so since it's such a big movement, goes against the essence of salah, it would break the salah. Someone was to jump, like they were to jump up. He says, وَالضَّرْبَةِ الْمُفْرِطَةِ, if someone was to hit someone really hard, this breaks the salah. This is just one movement, but it's a big hit. Then at this point, it would break the salah as well. He says, وَزِيَادَةِ رُكْنٍ فِعْلِيًّا عَمْدًا, and if somebody was to add a pillar intentionally, that's an action pillar, like an actional pillar, intentionally, then it breaks the salah. Say someone was to do an extra ruku', this will break the salah. They come up and they're like, oh, I'm going to do another ruku'. No, it breaks the salah. You're going to do an extra, you're going to do a third sujood, it breaks the salah. All right? He says, وَتَقَدُّمِ عَلَى إِمَامِهِ بِرُكْنَيْنِ فِعْلِيَيْنِ. And so if the person was to go in front of the imam with two actions that are like two arkan, that are two pillars that are in action. So the imam say the imam goes into ruku'. The person, he's in ruku', now he stands up from ruku', that's one action. He goes into sujood, the imam's still in ruku', broke the salah. As soon as he goes into sujood, he broke the salah. Because he's not following the imam anymore. And so that's if he precedes him with two pillars that are two of the pillars that are action pillars, as opposed to like the speaking pillars. Say he was reciting Fatiha before him, no problem. All right. He says, وَالتَّخَلُّفُ بِهِمَا بِغَيْرِ عُذْرٍ. Also, if he were to get behind the imam with two pillars behind the imam without an excuse, this would also break the salah. So the imam, he's with the imam. All of a sudden, he's reciting the Fatiha with the imam. The imam goes into ruku', and he's still wanting to recite something else. And now the imam is in ruku', and he comes out of ruku', and he's still standing. He didn't even go into ruku' yet. So he's still standing from this. This is two pillars. And as soon as the imam goes down to goes into the sujood, he broke the salah. If there was no excuse for him, he broke the salah. All right, so he has to follow the imam. Of course, he needs to do all of his pillars. He would catch up as fast as he could. and make sure he does the pillar properly and then stop and then go and try to catch up with the imam. But if he does it without an excuse, two of them would break the salah. All right. And he says here, وَنِيَةِ قَطْعِ الصَّلَاةِ وَتَعْلِيقِ قَطْعِهَا بِشَيْءٍ. And also, if somebody intended to cut off the salah, they think to themselves, say someone, this happens sometimes, someone will start up a sunnah, and they don't realize that someone's about to make the iqamah. So they start up a sunnah, and all of a sudden, when the person starts making iqamah, he's like, oh, I'm not going to finish the salah. As soon as this person has a thought that he's not going to finish the salah is done, is broken. As soon as the intention is no longer to finish the salah is done. So he doesn't need to go, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. No, as soon as he intended to break the salah is finished. So there's no need for him to say Assalamu alaikum to end the salah in the middle of it. As soon as he has the intention to cut, it's broken. Or he thinks that if so-and-so comes, I'm going to break the salah. No, the intention for the salah needs to be solid, and he can't connect his intention to something else. He says, if so-and-so comes and knocks on the door, then I'm going to break off the salah. The salah broke right now. And so if he's doing this, he needs to have the intention while he's in the salah, and it needs to be a firm intention. And also he mentions here, وَالتَّرَدُّدِ فِي قَطْعِهَا. Or if somebody is going back and forth thinking about, should I break off the salah or no? The salah is broken. Of course, don't let the waswasa, like whispers, get to you in this matter, and let the shaitan play with someone's mind in this. But if someone's not certain about whether or not they're going to pray, then they're not praying. You need to have a certainty with your prayer in this, and because the intention is a major part of the prayer that needs to be there throughout the whole thing. Although you don't need to think about the prayer while you're in it, you don't necessarily need to think I'm holding my intention for the prayer, but you can't have anything that goes against that intention. The intention, it's going to be throughout the whole prayer, but if you invalidate the intention somewhere throughout the prayer, then the salah is invalid. So he goes into the next part here, and he says, "Faslun alladhi yalzamu fihi niyatul imama arba'a." He says here the intention, that which needs the intention for being an imam is obligatory in four conditions. Like there's four things that the imam would need to have the intention for him leading people in four situations. The first of them is al-jumu'ah. He says al-jumu'ah, and this is because the imam, when he leads the people, he has to have the intention that he's going to be leading them, and that it's going to be in jama'ah, because the Jumu'ah prayer, it has to be in jama'ah. So he has to have the intention that he's leading them, or else it's not going to be valid for him if he's just praying by himself. He has to have the intention that he's leading people. If it was just a regular salah, and he doesn't have the intention to lead the people, then his prayer is valid, but he doesn't get the reward for leading people or the congregation. He won't get the reward because he didn't have his intention. But the people's prayer that's behind him is totally valid. And if someone was praying by themselves, and all of a sudden a person comes up and taps him and he wants to pray with them, that person who is praying by himself, he should intend, now I'm leading this other person so he can get the reward. If he doesn't intend anything, he doesn't get any reward. If he intends, he gets the reward. But of course, whether or not he intends, it doesn't affect the validity of the person who comes up and is led by him. That person who is being led by the other person, as long as he's being led by someone who's not being led by someone else, then he's okay. All right, so the imam, he needs to have the intention for the Jumu'ah. If he's praying in Jumu'ah, he needs to have the intention that he's leading people. And also, wal-mu'ada, and also if he's repeating a prayer. So if he's repeating a fard or a nafil salah, hoping to get a reward by being in congregation, he needs to have the intention that he's in congregation for that. Also, al-manduratu jama'ah, and also if he made a vow that he was going to pray a certain prayer in congregation, he would have to have the intention that he was leading other people. And also, wal-mutaqaddimatu fil matar. And also, the person who is praying in congregation, if there is rain, and there's a rukhsa, there's a concession for if there's rain during the first of the two times of prayer, then it's allowed for people in a masjid to pray the second prayer, say like they were praying Dhuhr, and it's raining. it might be hard for them to come back for Asr during the rain. So they can pray the Asr prayer right after the Dhuhr prayer. But they need to have the intention, and the Imam would have to have the intention that he's praying in Jama'ah so that he could have this allowance. It's just for the people that pray together so that they can pray in congregation and they don't have to go through the hardship of traveling through the rain to come back. All right, so this is where he talks about where it would be obligatory for the Imam to have the condition of leading others. Other than this, it would be sunnah for him. Now there's conditions for the person being led. For a person to be led by someone else, then here are the conditions here. He says, فَصْلٌ شُرُوطُ الْقُدْوَةِ أَحَدَ عَشَرٍ. He says that there's 11 conditions for following an imam. And the first of them, he says, أَنْ لَا يَعْلَمَ بُطْلَانَ صَلَاةِ إِمَامِهِ بِحَدْثٍ أَوْ غَيْرِهِ. And so he says the first of these conditions is that the person doesn't know that the salah of the imam is invalid because of a hadith, like the person didn't make wudu, or other than that, such as like this person has najis on them, in this case, or something that they know that person's salah is invalid. Such as occasionally you'll have a person who will come up and he'll lead other people, and he himself, when he bends down into sujood or into ruku', his awrah is showing. And this breaks his salah. He shouldn't be leading other people if his awrah is showing. So in this case, you couldn't be led by someone if you know that their awrah is showing during their salah. You can't be led by them. A note here, which a lot of the later comers and a lot of the different madhahib, they fell into an issue in this particular issue, where the fiqhi differences of opinion, such as a Hanafi, he doesn't believe that if he were to touch his private part, that it breaks his salah. I mean, that it breaks his wudu. Like if he were to touch his private part with his hand, he thinks that his wudu is still valid. Now, if this person was to lead us as if he was to lead me as a Shafi'i, and I saw him put his hand in his break his wudu according to me, and then he goes up and he stands up and he's going to pray. Can I pray behind him? And this is of the issues where the later comers of the Shafi'i madhab and also of the other madhab, they said, no, you can't pray behind him. But Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he mentions this issue in particular, and he says that it's well known that the Sahaba all had these differences of opinion when it comes to whether or not the Salah is valid and whether or not that person believes the thing he's doing is obligatory in the Salah or not. They had all these differences, and they all prayed behind each other, including Imam al-Shafi'i. He prayed behind all the other ai with these differences of opinion, and they did not say that they weren't going to pray behind another person because of a fiqhi difference of opinion. So this should never be a thing that ever breaks somebody apart or breaks a community apart because so-and-so is a Hanafi, I'm not going to pray behind him. Or so-and-so is a Shafi'i, he doesn't do the same things we do, so I can't pray behind him. No, we should never have this part of issue. And this is of the parts where some of the later comers in the different madhahib, even the Shafi'i madhab, they said that it's not, they would go to a point where they'd say that this person, if he was a Hanafi and he did his wudu in a way that's not an acceptable way to us, that we can't pray behind him as a Shafi'i. But this actually goes against the understanding of the Salaf, as well as it's actually like ijma', and that Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he brings the fact that it's ijma', that all of them used to pray behind each other, and they wouldn't make a condition that they were the same madhab or they had the same fiqhi views before they would pray behind them. They all prayed behind each other. As long as it's a valid fiqhi position that the person is holding, it's allowed for people to pray behind each other regardless of the madhab. All right. Also, he says here of the other conditions for being led, he says, وَأَنْ لَا يَعْتَقِدَ وُجُوبَ قَضَائِهِ قَضَائِهَا عَلَيْهِ. Also, that the person doesn't believe that the person who's praying the salah is going to have to make it up anyways. Like if somebody were to pray the salah, he doesn't have any wudu and he doesn't have tayammum, he can't do either one of these. The Shafi'i madhab, they would say that he has to remake up this salah. So at this point, if this person has to make up the salah, he shouldn't be leading another person. And this is the Shafi'i view on that matter. It says here, وَأَنْ لَا يَكُونَ مَأْمُونًا, and also that the person that is leading, he can't himself be a person who's following someone else. So the leader, if you're following somebody, you have to follow a leader that's not being led by anyone else. If somebody is being led by another person, then you join with the group. You don't make someone else a leader that's already following someone else. This does not work. So you would be led by the one leader that is leading everybody, not by someone who is being led by someone else. All right, or that would be invalid. He says, وَلَا أُمِّيَّةً. And also, you can't be led by someone who can't recite the Fatiha properly, if you can recite the Fatiha properly. So if somebody, they say they're a brand new Muslim, or they don't know how to say the letter Sad, or they don't know how to say the letter Daud, or they don't know how to say the letter Dal, and they say Sirad al-Lazina, or they don't understand how to pronounce the letters properly, or they switch things up in it. They say An'amti alayhim, or something of this sort. Then you can't make this person imam for you. The person needs to know how to recite Fatiha if you want to make them the imam. Unless you are at the same level, if you're at the same level, you can recite, or you can be led by them. If you're both just as bad, but if you're better than that person, or you recite it properly and he doesn't recite it properly, then at this point you can't be led by someone who doesn't recite it properly. This is the Shafi'i view in this matter. And of course, someone who can't recite the Fatiha properly, they should not lead other people. They should just know that until I can recite properly, I'm not going to lead other people. Um, okay, inshallah. All right, so we're going to finish this section here, and then for those who want to pray, we'll make a pause and we'll pray, and then after this, we'll continue the class so we can, inshallah, finish the book. We're not super far away from the end, but just so we don't hold the people back, we'll end at this chapter, and then we'll pick up after. All right, so he says here, the next, it says that the person is not an ummi. That this means that the person can actually recite. The person, if he's being led by someone, then he needs to make sure that if he can recite the Fatiha, that this person also can recite the Fatiha. If he can't recite the Fatiha, then he shouldn't be led by him. He says, وَأَلَّا يَتَقَدَّمْ عَلَيْهِ فِي الْمَوْقِفِ. Also, whenever you're being led by someone else, you're being led by them, meaning that person you should never be in front of the person that you're being led by. And so if this person stands in front of the other person, and the way we'd look at it is that the back heels. The back heels. If the heels if your heels are in front of the heels of the person you're being led by, it breaks the salah, and it breaks the being led by this other person. You need to be either equal or behind a little bit. And it would be sunnah for you to be a little behind so that you don't fall into something that's going to invalidate the salah. Because the person who is leading, he should be in front. And if you're right next to him, no problem, but it's best to be a little bit behind and on the right side. All right, he says, then the next of them, and the sixth condition is وَأَنْ يَعْلَمَ انْتِقَالَاتِ إِمَامِهِ. And also that he needs to know the movements of his imam. So if someone's going to follow somebody, he needs to know where that person is in the salah. If he was, say, in a back room over there, and he doesn't know where the person is here that he's being led by, he doesn't see anybody, doesn't know anything about the salah, at this point, how can he be led by him? He needs to know where that person is in his salah for it to count. Also, he says, وَأَنْ يَجْتَمِعَ فِي مَسْجِدٍ أَوْ فِي 300 ذِرَاعٍ تَقْرِيبًا. And also that they must be inside of the masjid together, like him and the imam should be in the same masjid. Anywhere that someone is in the masjid with the imam, he can follow him. So if the imam's here and that person's over there back in the other corner, he doesn't even see him, or he's back over here, as long as he's not in front of him and he knows where the person is in his salah, the following is valid. Is he going to get a reward for it, like for being in congregation? He needs to be in a row. He needs to be in a row if he's going to get a reward for it. Like if he was just by himself in the back and just following an imam over here, then he wouldn't get any reward unless he was with the rows. He was in the congregation, but the following would be valid if he was anywhere in the masjid. And also, he says, or 300 cubits. Like approximately 300 cubits away from the masjid. So if he was within 300 cubits of the masjid, outside, say like for Jummah, it's spread outside the masjid. Okay, as long as he's within 300 cubits of the masjid, it still works for him to follow the imam that's inside the masjid. Or if the lines keep going farther and farther, as long as he's not 300 cubits from any of the lines. and then it would count for him following. And you'll see this sometimes with like in Mecca. You'll find that people around the Kaaba, they'll go down the streets, but they shouldn't be 300 cubits from any of the other rows preceding them, and they should be able to know where the row is from before them, and they should see somebody that sees the imam, or that can at least follow the prayer inside of the masjid. So occasionally they won't even see anybody that can see anyone, and so that would be a problem. But if they were within, if they could see someone, and they were within 300 cubits from the previous rows, then it would be okay for them to follow. All right, and he says, when yanwi al-qudwa aw al-jama'ah, also for someone to lead, or if somebody wants to follow, then they have to have the intention that they're following. Either that they're following, like al-qudwa is that the person is following someone. Aw al-jama'ah, like if they intend congregational prayer, this is fine. They can either intend that they're following the imam, or that they're praying in congregation. Both of these intentions are fine. But they need to intend it if they're going to follow. So that they're connecting, because they're connecting their actions with someone else, they need to have a reason that they're connecting their actions with someone else, which is with the intention. If they didn't intend, they're not going to get a reward for it. And he says, وَأَن يَتَوَافَقَ النَّظْمُ صَلَاتِهِمَا. Also that the type of salat that they're doing is the same type. If someone's praying salat to janazah and someone wants to pray salat to dhuhr behind him, it doesn't work. Because the salat to janazah, he's not doing any ruku' in it, and so this would not work. It's got to be the same type of salah. And so it can't be a different type of salah. And also, if someone wanted to pray salat and someone wants to make up salat al-isha behind someone who's praying salat al-fajr, no problem. The person can do that. That's fine. He'll get the reward for being in congregation. And of course, if he has extra rakats, then he would pray his extra rakat. Or if he has less, then he would either wait for the imam, or he would intend to separate from him and finish it off. But as long as it's the same type of salah, then he can follow him. But if it's a different type, then he would not be able to follow him. He says, وَأَيْ لَا يُخَالِفَهُ فِي سُنَّةٍ فَاحِشَةِ الْمُخَالَفَةِ. And so also that the person doesn't go against him in a sunnah that would be an extreme difference. Such as if someone was to go into kunut, like a Shafi'i, he thinks that the kunut in Fajr is a ba'd. So he prays kunut every single Fajr at the second one. The Imam doesn't do it, so he wants to do kunut al-Fajr. So he's doing it, and the Imam already goes into sujood, and the Imam is keep going, and the man sits up. He went away from the Imam in this. So he can't go all the way. He can't do a sunnah that goes against the form of the Imam in a major way. If he were to do it really quickly before the imam comes up out of the sujood and whatnot, he was just to stand up and do a really quick kunut. Even if the imam didn't do it, it's fine, and he would still accomplish the sunnah in that case. He says, وَأَن يُتَابِعَهُ. And also the last of them is that he follows him. And so and of course this comes from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ says that the imam is meant to be followed. And so you should follow the imam. If he makes takbir, then you make takbir. And if he goes into ruku', you make ruku'. You follow him in what he does. So you can't go against the imam in that and then expect your prayer to be valid while you're going against the imam. You don't follow him in what he's doing. All right, and of course, if the imam broke his prayer for some reason, or the he started making a major mistake, and he wasn't listening, then you could separate from him with just intention. You would just intend that you separate, or maybe the imam his aura showed, and so you can't follow him. Then you would intend to separate from him. In that case, Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. He's going to go into some of the other things, but we'll stop here and we'll pick up after Salah. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Subhanaka.